Chapter 49. But they are already chasing away the passers-by. Can you tolerate that? Wei Hao widened his eyes. He couldn't tolerate it any longer. It was one thing to scold others, but what was with chasing away the passers-by? The reason why Wang Chong hung the sword above the Blue Phoenix Pavilion was to attract the attention of the passers-by. If the passers-by were to be chased away, who would come to buy the sword? Wouldn't Wang Chong's plan be foiled? You said it yourself. They are passers-by, and they are only here to take a look. Do you think that they will come to buy the sword? Wang Chong asked. Wei Hao was at a loss for words. Don't worry, it's nothing much. I have a plan in mind. Wang Chong patted Wei Hao's shoulders and smiled. He didn't think much of the actions of the great swordsmithing clans. If the Wuxia steel sword were to be sold at the price he expected, it was impossible for the great swordsmithing clans to not react. Wang Chong had already expected this. Shifting his body, Wang Chong changed to a more comfortable posture. This way, he could see more clearly. Suddenly, Wang Chong's eyes twitched. What's wrong? Wei Hao asked. I just saw two familiar faces. Wang Chong smiled as he stared into the distance. Through the crowd on the street, Wang Chong saw Zhang Tsong and Zhang Jian from the Zhang clan. Since the matter at the Blue Phoenix Pavilion had alarmed the Cheng clan, Huang clan, and Lu clan, it was impossible for the Zhang clan to be unaware. Just that, Wang Chong didn't expect to see two familiar faces, Zhang Tsong and Zhang Jian. Familiar faces? Do you want to meet them then? Wei Hao asked. There's no need for that. We'll meet when the time comes. Now wasn't the time for him to meet Zhang Tsong and Zhang Jian. Before they noticed him, Wang Chong pushed his teacup away and pulled Wei Hao away. What's going on? Why is he here? Unbeknownst to Wang Chong, when he was about to leave, Zhang Tsong and Zhang Jian had noticed him as well. Standing in the crowd, the two of them were equally astonished. Although Wang Chong walked very quickly, the two of them had a very deep impression of the youngest son of the Wang family. In particular, the words he said in front of them that day had left a very deep impression on them. Therefore, even though it was just a quick glance, the two of them quickly recognized Wang Chong among the many diners upstairs. When they first received the news, they only heard that someone was selling swords in the Blue Bottle Pavilion. They didn't expect to see Wang Chong here. This was something that the two of them had never heard of before. Don't tell me he's selling swords here? Zhang Jian subconsciously blurted out. Impossible! Zhang Tsong blurted out without any hesitation. The moment he said it, he felt that it was a little inappropriate. He tried to cover it up, but the more he tried to cover it up, the more obvious he was. I mean, maybe it's just a coincidence. He's just here to drink tea. Yes. Zhang Jian replied. Surprisingly, he didn't say anything else. Both of them took large strides towards the Cheng, Huang, and Lu families to greet them. Zhang Tsong, Zhang Jian, you're here. Upon seeing the two of them, the people from the three clans who were acquainted with them immediately walked forward to welcome them. It's just a fellow who came from nowhere trying to please the crowd. Tell your clan head not to pay him any heed. You can return now. I see. After asking the three clans about the details of the matter, the two of them heaved a long sigh of relief. We'll report this matter to our clan head. Even though they said so, for some reason, the two of them were in a daze. Almost simultaneously, they thought of Wang Chong, who had appeared on the second floor of the Blue Bottle Pavilion. Wang Chong's appearance made the two of them feel uneasy. I hope that it isn't what I think it is. With such thoughts in mind, the two of them quickly turned around and left. No one noticed that a leader of the Imperial Army was standing in the crowd in front of the gate tower. He was stroking the stubble on his chin as he looked at the sword hanging in front of the gate tower with an amused expression. After the ruckus caused by the three great swordsmithing clans, the entrance of the Blue Bottle Pavilion was completely deserted. In the view of the few great clans, this matter had come to an end. However, what no one expected was that after a day of peace, the Blue Bottle Pavilion caused an even bigger commotion on the second day, attracting the attention of many people once more. 1,200 gold taels. This was the latest price of the sword in the Blue Bottle Pavilion. Compared to the first day, the price had doubled. Furthermore, The owner of the sword even released a statement through the Blue Bottle Pavilion. The sword on the pavilion would only be sold for 2 hours a day. After 2 hours, even if one wanted to buy it, it would not be sold. Furthermore, no one was allowed to look or touch it. 1,200 gold taels? Is he insane? In the Cheng clan's residence in the capital, an elder's eyes widened when he heard the price, as though they were about to pop out of their sockets. Who does that bastard think he is? How could he dare to sell a sword for 1,200 gold taels? Furthermore, it's gold. Even our Cheng clan doesn't dare to sell it at such a high price. Who does he think he is? Does he think that the people in the capital are fools? What is the Blue Bottle Pavilion thinking to allow him to cause such a ruckus? He was present at the Blue Bottle Pavilion yesterday. Even if he wanted to please the crowd, there should be a limit to it. What he couldn't understand the most was the Blue Bottle Pavilion. In the capital, the Blue Bottle Pavilion was quite influential. To allow someone to cause such a ruckus, how was he going to continue doing business in the future? How is it? Is there any news on the matter I asked you to look into? The elder of the Cheng clan, Qing Yuqing, put down the letter in his hands. Pausing for a moment, he turned to the disciple who delivered the letter and asked. Reporting to Elder, I've looked into it. It said that the one who sold the sword is a friend of the boss of the Blue Bottle Pavilion. It's hard to let go of an old friendship, so he put it up for sale there. What should we do? Elder, they're ruining our business. Should we take a look or warn them? The Qing clan disciple asked. Preposterous. The elder of the Cheng clan, Qing Yuqing, glared at him and reprimanded. Do we have to follow a child's ruckus as well? How can this be? A sword that costs 1,200 gold taels. Do you think that he will be able to sell it? Let him cause a ruckus for a while, and after a period of time, he will calm down. Yes, elder. The disciple who spoke hurriedly lowered his head in fear. He didn't say anything else. No one would spend 1,200 taels of gold to buy a weapon without knowing the ins and outs of the weapon. This price was far beyond the market. Any normal person would never buy it. As long as no one went to buy it, this matter would naturally turn into a farce and be left unsettled. This was the attitude of the Qing, Huang, and Lu great swordsmithing clans. To them, the matter at the Blue Bottle Pavilion was just a storm caused by a nobody. It wasn't worth their attention, and it wasn't worth making a huge fuss over. After all, they had their own standing. However, in the capital, the atmosphere in another clan was completely different. How is it? Have you investigated it? At the same time, in the inner residence of the Zhang clan, Zhang Tsong and Zhang Jian had a grim expression on their faces. The atmosphere was completely different from the other clans. I've investigated it. The Blue Bottle Pavilion is a business of the Duke of Wei residence. It seems that the Gongzi of the Duke of Wei specially requested the shopkeeper to hang the sword at the pavilion. The Zhang clan disciple bowed and clasped his hands respectfully. The Gongzi of the Duke of Wei? Do you know which Gongzi it is? Zhang Jian's expression tensed up and he hurriedly asked. It seems to be Gongzi Wei Hao. The Zhang clan disciple replied. Upon hearing this name, Zhang Tsong and Zhang Jian stared at one another, and their faces changed. You can leave first. Zhang Jian waved his hands. After the Zhang clan disciple left, the duo stared at one another. The atmosphere froze and no one spoke. This isn't good. Isn't that way how the one who is close to Wang Chong? In the end, Zhang Tsong was the first to speak. He frowned worriedly. Due to the issue with the Hyderabad ores, they had been paying close attention to Wang Chong. Naturally, they were also paying attention to the people around him. Wei Hao was one of them. Regarding the Hyderabad ores, the duo didn't believe that the Wang clan was intending to dabble in the blacksmithing industry and purchase the Hyderabad ores. The Wang clan didn't have any experience in this aspect. From the bottom of their hearts, they didn't believe that Wang Chong was serious. Thus, they didn't think too much of it. However, if the one who sent the sword at the Blue Bottle Pavilion was Wang Chong, then everything would be different. It didn't matter if Wang Chong could succeed or not. No matter how absurd his actions were, he had actually done it and even forged a sword. Just this unexpected turn of events was enough to make the two of them uneasy, even panicked. No one liked variables. Without a doubt, The Hyderabad ores were already showing signs of unease. This matter isn't looking good. He can't really be forging a sword, right? Zhang Jian felt uneasy as well. No matter what, we have to be cautious. Even though I don't believe that a child could be so formidable, the matter regarding the Hyderabad ores is of great importance to us. We should quickly report this matter to the clan head. The two of them quickly stood up and hurried into the room. 1,200 gold taels. To an ordinary person in the Central Plains, this was a huge sum of money that they wouldn't be able to spend even after several lifetimes. Yet, this was only the price of a sword. Just when many people thought that this was an unattainable high price, the actions of the Bluebottle Pavilion on the third day refreshed everyone's understanding of the world. 2,400 gold taels. This was the latest price at the entrance of the Bluebottle Pavilion. The person at the entrance of the Bluebottle Pavilion seemed to be determined to shock everyone with his words. In his heart, there didn't seem to be any concept of price. When this latest price was announced, the entire weapon market in the capital burst into an uproar. Regardless of who the person at the entrance of the Bluebottle Pavilion was, even if it was a prank, his actions had successfully attracted everyone's attention. 2,400 gold taels. Of the thousands of sword shops and smiths in the capital, there wasn't a single one who dared to offer such a sky-high price. Yet, this unknown owner of the Bluebottle Pavilion managed to do what others didn't dare to do. Not only so, on the first day, 600 gold taels. On the second day, 1,200 gold taels. On the third day, 2,400 gold taels. Many people could tell that the person at the entrance of the Bluebottle Pavilion wasn't just raising the price. His price had risen by an entire fold from the previous day. How daring must he be to do such a thing? Lunatic, this fellow is truly a lunatic. Isn't that right? What kind of sword can be worth 2,400 gold taels for a sword to be worth such a price? Anyone who isn't a lunatic would be able to do such a thing. More importantly, he isn't even allowed to look or touch it. Who in the world would sell a sword like that? Otherwise, why would I say that he's a lunatic? Outside the Bluebottle Pavilion, the crowd was laughing and pointing at the commotion. In any case, it was free to watch the commotion. Furthermore, the Bluebottle Pavilion was even giving out delicious pastries to the crowd. Chapter 50. It was one thing if it was an ordinary person, but with the endorsement of the Bluebottle Pavilion, the matter was completely different. In any case, this matter attracted the attention of more and more people in the capital. When this matter reached the ears of the Cheng, Huang, and Lu clans, the initially nonchalant swordsmithing clans couldn't maintain their composure. However, what the Cheng, Huang, and Lu clans didn't expect was that an even greater change would occur on the evening of the third day. It was this unexpected incident that changed the nature of the matter, as well as the view the other clans had of the Bluebottle Pavilion. 2,400 gold taels. This should be the most expensive sword pavilion in the Central Plains. The sun was setting in the west, and in the evening, no one noticed a bearded Western region merchant appearing at the Bluebottle Pavilion. This Western region merchant was called Mozaid, and he was a sword merchant from the Western Karax Spazu. Karax Spazinu, or Iraq, was known as Karax Spazinu in ancient times. Different from other sword merchants, Mozaid didn't treat swords as a business. Instead, he treated it as a hobby that he would dedicate his life to. Mozaid loved swords, and his love for them had reached an insane level. Toward those top-notch swords, he had a passion that came from deep within his bones. If he were to see such a sword, he would do everything in his power to buy it. Mozaid had set his sights on the world. His wish in life was to see all the best treasured swords and sabers in the world. Thus, the first thing Mozaid did upon arriving at the Central Plains was to visit all of the sword shops and smiths in the capital of the Tang dynasty. But none of the swords there could catch his eye. This place should be the most prestigious sword tower in the Central Plains. Mozaid thought as he looked at the signboard on the pavilion. After visiting the thousands of sword shops in the capital of the Tang dynasty, this was the most expensive place he had seen. There wasn't a single sword shop or smithing shop that could match up to this. 2,400 gold taels. Even in the Abbasid Caliphate and Karax Spazu, this was an extremely rare price. Mosade didn't understand the Central Plains, but according to the rules of Carex Spazinu, only the best swordsmiths and the best swordsmiths would dare to sell their swords at the highest price. Without a doubt, this was the best sword pavilion in the Central Plains. Those who dared to sell weapons here must be the best swordsmiths. Before coming here, I heard that the market for weapons in the Central Plains is far inferior to that of the Abbasid Caliphate and Carex Spazinu, but from the looks of it, that's not the case at all. The owner of this sword tower must be very confident that he dared to wrap a sword worth more than 2,000 taels of silver in black cloth. He didn't even need to show it to others. Mosade had learned a little of the language of the Central Plains, so he could vaguely recognize some of the words on the door. He couldn't help but feel impressed. Abbasid Caliphate and Carex Spazinu had a large number of top-notch swordsmiths, and their smithing industry was rather developed. However, even the most formidable swordsmithing master wouldn't dare to do as this sword pavilion did, wrapping up their swords and sabers for others to see. In the eyes of the people of Carex Spazinu, such a master must be the most formidable in the Central Plains. Mosade immediately felt a strong desire to meet the most formidable sword master of the Central Plains. Thinking of this, Mosade immediately walked toward the Bluebottle Pavilion. However, after taking a few steps, a gust of wind blew past. My scarf! Not too far away, the exclamation of a lady could be heard. Amidst the wind, a green scarf fluttered in the air. Mosade didn't pay much attention to it initially, but after taking a few steps, he realized that the green scarf was flying toward his face. Master, be careful! A few loyal Carex Spazinu guards immediately rushed over. Upon seeing this sight, Mosade chuckled. Without waiting for the guards to rush over, he placed his hand on his waist. Shwa! A cold light flashed, and the silk scarf, which was as light as a feather, was immediately cut into 2 pieces. The 2 pieces fell to the ground. The Carex Spazinu guards stopped in their tracks. From afar, the lady's scream came to an abrupt halt. She stared in Mosade's direction with a shocked expression. Cutting through a single strand of hair. This was the standard of the best swordsmiths in Carex Spazinu. Mosade sliced apart the green scarf in the air and chuckled. Then, he sheathed his saber at his waist with an arrogant expression. This was his best sword and it was also his favorite sword and saber. Bring 2 gold ingots over to compensate that lady. Leaving behind these words, Mosade walked into the Bluebottle Pavilion with widened strides. Behind him, 2 Carex Spazinu guards grabbed 2 gold ingots and hurried over to the stunned lady. Putting aside the matter at the Bluebottle Pavilion, in the Wang family residence, after handing over the matter of the Wuxia steel sword to Wei Hao, Wang Chong began to focus on his martial arts. With the panther bone, I can cultivate some of the cultivation techniques from my previous life. Early in the morning in the Wang family's back garden, Wang Chong was playing with a string of pearls as thoughts flashed through his mind. Possessing the memories of his previous life, Wang Chong had too many cultivation techniques from his previous life in his mind. However, most of these destructive cultivation techniques were limited by Wang Chong's root bone, making it impossible for him to cultivate them. However, things were different now. Even though Wang Chong's root bone wasn't very strong, he was still able to cultivate it. However, after obtaining the panther bone, he could start practicing some of the basic and low-level cultivation techniques from his previous life. I'll cultivate the Herculean punch. After contemplating for a long moment, Wang Chong finally made up his mind. In his previous life, when the steel horsemen from the foreign lands appeared out of nowhere, their powerful defense rendered the soldiers of all the countries at the bottom of the hierarchy helpless. That was until the invention of the Herculean punch. This fist technique stacked the strength of one's entire body together like a tidal wave. With a single punch, a low-level soldier would be able to exert strength several times that of their own. Thus, the current situation was changed. Honestly speaking, this kind of fist technique was not a very brilliant technique. But in the origin energy realm, it was definitely the strongest cultivation technique. Given Wang Chong's current situation, this fist technique from the military was the most suitable for him. Gongzi, someone is looking for you outside. Just when Wang Chong was about to start cultivating, Shenlong's voice suddenly sounded by his ear. It's the two Buddhist men. Wang Chong pondered for a moment before smiling. He already understood what was going on. After such a long time, they should be making some movements by now. Let them in. Yes. Shenlong turned around and left quickly. In just a moment, two figures walked in with fluttering sleeves. Gongzi, Ablanadin and Arloja bowed, speaking in Sanskrit. Masters, you're getting impatient already? Wang Chong faintly smiled, apparently already knowing why they had come. Gongzi, I'm truly sorry. It's just that this matter is extremely important to us. Back then, we made an agreement with Gongzi that as long as Gongzi can fork out 90,000 gold taels within a month, you will obtain the 300 jun of ores we have and the rights to sell the Hyderabad ores in the Central Plains. It's been so long now, and it's not far from the 1-month deadline. I wonder how Gongzi is doing? The two of them clasped their palms together and asked apologetically. Ha, masters, are you suspecting that I can't fork out 90,000 gold taels? Wang Chong heartily laughed as he made clear the purpose of their visit. Gongzi, please don't blame us. This matter is of great importance. Having their intentions exposed by Wang Chong, the two of them felt awkward and ashamed. But after hesitating for a while, he decided to tell the truth. Young master, I won't hide it from you. Our Sindhu is currently suffering from a severe famine, and with every passing day, more people die. During this period of time, Hyderabad had written several letters urging them. We have no choice but to be anxious. The two of them looked anxious as they spoke. This was not an act. The situation in Sindhu was already very serious. If the situation was serious, the two of them would definitely not rush Wang Chong. You don't have to worry. As for the matter of 90,000 taels of gold, I will be able to gather the money within this period of time. As for Sindhu, if you are worried, I can first contact the Turkic merchants and have them gather a batch of cattle and sheep to send to your Sindhu. Although Wang Chong didn't have much gold left, cattle and sheep weren't as expensive as swords. 100 taels of gold could still buy a lot of cattle and sheep. Really? The two of them were surprised and delighted. Looking at Wang Chong, they felt extremely moved. The western border of the Turkic Khaganate was much closer to Sindhu than the Central Plains. If Wang Chong could contact the Turkic merchants and have them send some cattle and sheep over, it would be great for Sindhu. Given Sindhu's situation, this was a timely help, even though Wang Chong didn't have such an obligation at the moment. Of course. Wang Chong smiled and nodded. No one knew better than him that Sindhu was in need of help at this moment. There was nothing more worthwhile than using a little bit of help to exchange for their gratitude. A drop of water should be repaid with a spring of water. This saying was applicable to all corners of the world. In the future negotiations for the Hyderabad ores, these things would be of great help. As for the matter of the 90,000 taels of gold, if you don't believe me, follow me. The matter of the cattle and sheep was a matter for the future. It would take at least 10 days before they reached Sindh. However, the matter of 90,000 taels of gold was urgent. Words alone were no proof. Since the two monks already had doubts in their hearts, they would not be at ease without concrete evidence. All of this was within Wang Chong's expectations. Wang Chong didn't stand on ceremony. He called for a carriage and brought the two of them straight to Blue Bottle Pavilion. See, 2,400 taels. Gold. Wang Chong added with a smile. Standing among the crowd, the two Sindhi monks glanced at one another and saw the deep shock in the other's eyes. Wang Chong chuckled inwardly. They had arrived early today, but the price they saw was still the same as yesterday. If they were to wait until noon and see that 2,400 taels had become 4,800 taels, they would be even more shocked. 2,400 taels. Have the swords of the Central Plains become so expensive? The two of them didn't recognize the words of the Central Plains, but they were still able to recognize 2,400. This price left them deeply astonished. The two of them didn't expect the weapon market of the Central Plains to have flourished to such an extent. Is this the weapon you forged? Wang Chong nodded his head and didn't deny it. Now, are you still worried that I won't be able to take out 90,000 gold taels? It's fine, it's fine. The two of them hurriedly waved their hands, but their hearts were filled with excitement. If a weapon could be sold for more than 2,000 gold taels, then 90,000 gold taels wouldn't be a problem for this noble Gongzi. If they could really raise 90,000 gold taels within a month, it would be great news for Sinnu. Recalling how they doubted whether Wang Chong would be able to take out 90,000 gold taels, the two of them felt ashamed. When Wang Chong saw the ashamed expressions on their faces, he inwardly chuckled. Selling a weapon for 2,400 gold taels and selling it for 2,400 gold taels were two completely different concepts. Even though the two Sindhi Buddhist monks were tasked with promoting the Hyderabad ores, it was clear that they weren't too familiar with the market for such weapons. It's fortunate that they don't speak the same language and can only speak Sanskrit. Otherwise, it would be hard to fool them. Wang Chong was also rejoicing inwardly. Masters, let's go up and have some tea. Chapter 51. Wang Chong, you're finally here. If you were any later, I might not be able to hold on any longer. The moment Wang Chong entered the Blue Bottle Pavilion, Wei Hao rushed out anxiously. His forehead was filled with sweat. What's wrong? Wang Chong frowned as he stared at Wei Hao in astonishment. Wei Hao had a carefree personality, and as such he rarely paid attention to anything. This was the first time Wang Chong saw him so anxious. Something has happened, something huge has happened. Someone is here to cause trouble. Wei Hao stuttered. He was so anxious that his tongue was tied. Don't panic, speak slowly. Even if the sky falls, I'll hold it up. What do you mean by causing trouble? Wang Chong said as he gestured for Wei Hao to calm down. Perhaps it was Wang Chong's aura that worked. Wei Hao gradually calmed down. Only then did he speak of the matter. Yesterday evening, just as Wei Hao was preparing to return, a merchant from Mosade Karak's Spas Inu suddenly appeared. This fellow spoke in a half-baked Chinese, and the moment he walked up, he started talking about the swords and sabers of the Central Plains. He said that he couldn't think of anything and that it was better than the West. Wei Hao thought that he had met a sucker and he was delighted. Unexpectedly, this fellow suddenly took out a saber, intending to compete with Wang Chong. Only then did Wei Hao realize that this bastard was here to cause trouble. Wei Hao was infuriated, so he wanted the other party to leave. He didn't expect this fellow to start acting at this moment, saying that his language wasn't good and that he couldn't understand him. In any case, he stubbornly refused to stay in the Blue Bottle Pavilion, intending to compete with the saber that Wang Chong hung on the pavilion. Wei Hao had been arguing with him for a very long time, and it had attracted the attention of many people. In fact, it was starting to affect the business of the Blue Bottle Pavilion. Wei Hao wanted to chase him away, but this fellow was in the saber and sword business. As long as he didn't break the rules, Wei Hao couldn't chase him away. Wang Chong, if you don't come, I won't be able to hold on. That fellow had been clamoring to hang his weapon on the Blue Bottle Pavilion to display it to everyone. If you can hang on it, why can't he? Furthermore, it was rumored that it was rising to the Central Plains and Karak's Spazunu. I really can't do anything to him. Wei Hao spat out all the words he had been holding back in one breath. This time, when Wang Chong sold the sword, he had thought that it would be a simple transaction. You buy, I sell. He did not expect it to be so complicated. What about that Karak's Spazinu merchant? Wang Chong said. Inside. I stalled him temporarily and said that I would wait for you to come over. As soon as Wang Chong appeared, Wei Hao calmed down as if he had found his pillar of support. Let's go, take me to him. Wang Chong left the two Bengu poison monks behind and got someone to arrange a private room. Then he quickly left with Wei Hao. In a compartment within the Blue Bottle Pavilion, Wang Chong finally met the Karak's Spazinu merchant that Wei Hao spoke of. You're Mosade? Wang Chong stared at the bearded man in front of him. You're the owner of that sword? Mosade stared at Wang Chong in astonishment. He didn't expect that the owner of the sword would be a child in his teens. However, upon seeing Wang Chong nod his head, Mosade quickly tossed all of this to the back of his mind. His passion for famed swords and sabers had long made him disregard everything else. Age and the like were not within his consideration at all. Great. I like your sword a lot. You must be an incredible sword master. This is the treasured saber of our Carex Spazinu, as well as my most treasured saber. I would like to compete with you. Mo Zaid immediately stood up from the rattan chair with a passionate expression. Didn't I already tell you that you can't? Wei Hao flew into a rage. Why didn't this fellow listen to him? If not for the Chamberlain of Dependency's order to treat foreign guests and merchants with courtesy, he would have long chased them out. Sure, Wang Chong said. These two simple words seemed to have infinite magic power. The entire private room suddenly became deathly silent. Wei Hao stared at Wang Chong in a daze. His mouth was wide open, and he couldn't believe his ears. He hurriedly looked for Wang Chong and tried his best to stall for time so that Wang Chong wouldn't agree to his request. Otherwise, he would have agreed to it yesterday. But he hadn't expected Wang Chong to agree to the matter that he had refused for so long, and without the slightest hesitation. On the other side, Mo Zaid was also surprised. He had been to other swordsmiths and smiths in the capital, and the other party would still be enthusiastic at the start. However, whenever he made such a request, the other party would always reject him and chase him out. This noble Gongzi, Wei Hao, tried his best to reject his request. Mo Zaid was prepared to spend a lot of effort to convince the swordsmith, but he didn't expect the other party to agree to his request so readily. This was something that even Mo Zaid did not expect. Wang Chong, you're insane. Wei Hao finally reacted. Ignoring Mo Zaid's presence, he grabbed Wang Chong's arm and pulled him to the next room. That fellow is clearly here to cause trouble. You know that he doesn't have good intentions, so why did you agree to his request? Wei Hao asked with a hushed voice, agitated. Wang Chong's decision had caught him off guard. Even now, he still couldn't accept the huge difference between the situation and his expectations. Calm down. Wang Chong smiled and gestured for Wei Hao to calm down. Honestly speaking, right from the start, Wang Chong's plan was to deal with the imperial army. The merchants of the western regions weren't part of his considerations at all. However, Mo Zaid's appearance had provided an additional opportunity for Wang Chong. As long as he made good use of it, this matter would only benefit him. This Mo Zaid doesn't have any ill intentions. He's not doing this for the reason you think he's here to cause trouble. Wang Chong explained with a smile. Wei Hao didn't know much about this Mo Zaid, but with the decades of memories from his previous life, Wang Chong knew that Mo Zaid didn't have any ill intentions. This involved the habits of the Central Plains, Abbasid Caliphate, and Carex Spazinu. In Abbasid Caliphate and Carex Spazinu, people had a habit when purchasing swords. They liked to compare their swords with the other parties. If the quality of the other party's sword was higher and could break their own sword, or even make a dent in the blade, then they would happily buy the better sword. Otherwise, they would abandon it. In Carex Spazinu and Abbasid Caliphate, this was a normal behavior, and it was tacitly accepted by the entire industry. Through this kind of behavior, those low-quality swords were quickly eliminated. As for the remaining swords, most of them were of superior quality, and there wasn't much of a difference between them. Through this behavior, Carex Spazinu and Abbasid Caliphate promoted the advancement of the entire industry, causing the quality of weapons in the West to rise. Those top-notch swords were able to fetch a price commensurate with their quality, and the standing of swordsmiths rose significantly. They were highly respected in the West. After a long period of time, the weapon market in Abbasid Caliphate and Carex Spazinu flourished, far surpassing that of the Central Plains. In the West, everyone in Abbasid Caliphate and Carex Spazinu benefited from this. In Wang Chong's memories, a few years later, the Abbasid Caliphate and Carex Spazinu sword merchants would enter the Central Plains on a large scale, and they would bring this behavior to the Central Plains as well. The weapons of the East and the West would clash with one another, the smithing skills would clash with one another, and the habits of the people would clash with one another. In Wang Chong's memories, it was only after the weapon merchants in the Central Plains started to accept this behavior that the price of weapons in the Central Plains started to rise. Only competition could bring about prosperity. Only when the Central Plains accepted and got used to such competition would the weapon market of the Central Plains welcome a true leap forward. When swordsmiths started to spend more time and effort on their weapons, when the requirements for the weapons they forged became more stringent, Only then would the weapon market of the Central Plains welcome a qualitative leap forward. Those top-notch weapons were able to fetch an even higher price in the market, and after the swordsmiths reaped high profits, they would then forge even more top-notch weapons. This was the trend of the world, and it was a virtuous cycle. Everyone benefited from it. It was precisely because Wang Chong knew of this trend that he didn't reject it. Furthermore, if he were to make use of this situation well, it would be beneficial to his plans. But even so, you shouldn't have agreed to their request. Wei Hao listened to Wang Chong's explanation of the trading habits of Carrick's Spazinu. His expression was tense, and worry filled his heart. You might not know how sharp the weapons of the Abbasid Caliphate and Carrick's Spazinu are. Those swords can cut through a hair with a single blow. There was once a merchant from the western regions who gifted a curved blade to my father, and it easily sliced through a famed blade that my father collected. I witnessed it with my own eyes. If I knew how formidable those fellows were, I wouldn't have rejected them. Wei Hao was worried. In the Central Plains, the swords of the West weren't well known yet. However, due to his father's relationship with the Duke of Wei, Wei Hao knew how formidable the weapons of the Abbasid Caliphate and Carrick's Spazinu were. So, you're worried that I might lose to him? Wang Chong chuckled. Wei Hao was speechless. Don't worry, I know how formidable the swords I forge are. I won't lose to him. Wang Chong smiled faintly. Of course, Wang Chong knew how formidable the weapons of the Abbasid Caliphate and Carrick's Spazinu were. After all, he had witnessed it in his previous life. However, Wang Chong was more confident in his weapons. In this era, it was impossible for a weapon that was more formidable than Wuxia steel to exist. After consoling Wei Hao, Wang Chong walked back into Mozade's compartment. Master, you agreed. Upon seeing Wang Chong enter, Mozade's eyes lit up. Don't worry, I know that the rules of the Central Plains are different from Carrick's Spazinu. If your weapon is damaged, I will compensate you. If you are able to damage my saber, that would be even better. I am willing to pay a higher price to buy your saber. There's no need for compensation. As for buying it, we can talk about it when the time comes. Wang Chong chuckled. 2,400 gold taels was the price on the third day. If this Carrick's Spazinu merchant thought that this was the price of his weapon, he would be sorely mistaken. Wang Chong wasn't prepared to sell the world's first true Wuxia steel weapon so cheaply. That would be a huge loss for him. Can I take a look at that famous saber of yours? Chapter 52. Of course. Mozade said nonchalantly. He unsheathed the treasured saber from his waist. His right hand gripped the saber hilt, and he drew it out with a swoosh. Clang. The moment the treasured saber was unsheathed, a cold light shot out and circled the entire room. Even the temperature dropped. The entire room fell silent, and Wei Hao's expression changed. This treasured saber was even more powerful than the one he had seen at his father's, the Duke of Wei. This Mozade of Carrick's Spazinu wasn't lying. The sword in his hand was indeed a famous one. Ordinary swords and sabers could not compare to this kind of cold chi. There probably weren't many in the Central Plains who could compare to him. Here. Mozade handed the knife over. Good saber. Wang Chong didn't stand on ceremony. He took the saber from Mozade's hands and examined it carefully. Since his rebirth, this was the first time he had seen a famous sword of Carrick's Spazinu. It was different from the Central Plains. The Central Plains revered the sword, while the Abbasid Caliphate revered the saber. Furthermore, the shape of their sabers was completely different from the sabers of the Central Plains. First of all, they were not long, only about a foot long. Furthermore, the sabers were curved like the crescent moon in the sky. Wang Chong did not know if this had anything to do with the worship of the moon in the Abbasid Caliphate and Carrick's Spazinu. The blade of Mozade's Carrick's Spazinu was extremely sharp. One could tell that it had been tempered 1,000 times. As the saying goes, the fall of a single leaf reveals the arrival of autumn. From the forging of the saber, it can be seen that the forging standards of the weapons of the Abbasid Caliphate and Carrick's Spazinu were indeed very high. In some aspects, they were even higher than the Central Plains. Wang Chong flicked his wrist, and a cold light flashed past. In the private room, a corner of the table made of hard sandalwood immediately fell without a sound. The corner of the table fell to the ground with a clang. "Good saber," Wang Chong praised. At the side, Wei Hao's expression changed. Wang Chong held the saber with both hands, waved it around, and returned the famed saber. "Mr. Mozaid, why don't we change the rules? Since it was a contest of swords and sabers, there should be rules for the contest. If you can beat me, I will compensate you for the price of my sword. And if you lose, I don't want you to pay the price of a sword, 1,200 taels of gold. Wei Hao, there will be more people who come to challenge me in the future. I can't possibly meet them one by one. Let's just follow this rule." Wang Chong. Wei Hao was shocked. With a single look, he could tell that Mozaid's saber wasn't ordinary. Just when he wanted to remind Wang Chong not to agree to it, he didn't expect Wang Chong to raise such strict conditions. "Ha, good." Mozaid rejoiced. No matter what conditions Wang Chong raised, as long as he agreed, 1,200 gold taels was nothing. The majority of Karak's Spas Inu merchants were extremely wealthy and had been doing business for generations. As long as they could achieve their goals, they didn't care about this small amount of money. Furthermore, Wang Chong's conditions were clearly advantageous to him. If he lost, he wouldn't have to compensate, but if he won. It had been a long time since Mozaid had met someone who could defeat him. Mozaid couldn't wait for Wang Chong to win. This way, he would be able to buy an even better sword. However, there's one more thing. I'm unable to have a sword duel with you now. If you wish to compete with me, you will have to wait until the 7th day. Wang Chong said. "No problem, it's a small matter." Mozaid laughed heartily, not minding Wang Chong's words. As long as Wang Chong agreed to it, waiting for 7 days was nothing. "Right, there's something I'm curious about. When I entered, I saw a massive metal mountain at your entrance. I wonder what it's used for? There has never been such a situation in our Karak's Spazinu." "Hee, you will know in 7 days' time." Wang Chong chuckled. After saying those words, he turned around and left. "Right, if you don't mind, before our duel, I would like to hang my Karak's Spas Inu saber up here as well. Is it possible?" After taking a few steps, Mozaid's voice sounded behind him. There was a hint of craftiness in his voice. Business is business. The reason why he came to the Central Plains wasn't just for a sword duel. Wang Chong chuckled. Just like what he remembered, these Abbasid Caliphate and Karak's Spas Inu saber merchants wouldn't let go of any opportunity to promote themselves. However, Mozaid didn't know that his thoughts were playing into Wang Chong's hands. This was exactly what Wang Chong wanted him to do. "Sure." After saying those words, Wang Chong walked out of the booth. "Wang Chong, you're mad. Do you know that this will lead to a huge problem?" Walking out of the room, Wei Hao hurriedly chased after Wang Chong with a flustered expression. "According to the price of the sword, do you know how much it is? 2,400 taels. No, it's 4,800 taels. If you win, you won't even earn half of it. If you lose, you will have to pay so much. What in the world are you thinking? We don't even know if we can gather the 90,000 gold taels for the Hyderabad ores, and we have to pay the 1,700 gold taels for the 8 Gods Pavilion in a month's time. Yet, you're doing this now, you're going to bring disaster to your family." Wei Hao's face flushed red from anxiety. Wang Chong had tried Mozaid's saber before, and it was even sharper than the one his father kept. Even though Wang Chong had witnessed the other party's prowess, he still agreed to it. Wei Hao didn't expect this. The reason why he agreed to Wang Chong's request to sell the Wuxia steel sword at the Blue Bottle Pavilion was to help his brother earn some money. The two of them were brothers who had grown up together, so it was impossible for him not to help. However, Wei Hao didn't expect such a simple matter to turn out like this. Not only would Wang Chong be unable to earn money, he would even bring disaster to the Wang clan and compensate them with a huge sum of money. And he was one of the accomplices. For the first time, Wei Hao felt regret. Furthermore, what do you mean by follow the rules? If more of such people were to appear, do you know how much money you'll have to pay? Just the thought of the rules set by Wang Chong made Wei Hao feel like his internal organs were on fire. "Don't worry, he won't be able to win," Wang Chong said calmly. Do you know? What did you just say? Wei Hao was stunned. I said that he won't be able to win. Wang Chong chuckled as he repeated his words. Wei Hao stared at Wang Chong in a daze, and for a moment he was speechless. He was originally filled with anger, but when he heard these words, all of his anger immediately dissipated. He won't be able to win? Wei Hao found it hard to believe. He had witnessed the sharpness of the saber in the suite. Wang Chong said calmly. His expression was filled with confidence. This was the confidence he had in himself, as well as the confidence he had in the Wuxia steel sword. Wei Hao was instantly stunned. He had 1,000 words in his heart, but in the face of Wang Chong's domineering and arrogant words, he couldn't say a single word. He didn't know where Wang Chong got his confidence from, to actually dare to boast that he would definitely win. He had personally experienced Mosade's Karak's Spaz Inu saber. That was a top-notch saber, so sharp that it was suffocating, and so sharp that it made one's heart palpitate. Just a glance at it would probably give one nightmares at night. This was also the reason why he kept reminding Wang Chong to reject the challenge. Although Wang Chong's sword was not bad, to be honest, Wei Hao had no confidence in it. Can you really win? Wei Hao hesitated. Of course. Wang Chong smiled, brimming with confidence. He wasn't a fool. When he received the machete, he had specially tested it out. He used his pinky to secretly tap on the tip of the blade. The other party's saber was indeed sharp, but the blade was made of ordinary steel. It couldn't be compared to the Hyderabad ores. Furthermore, the other party had only comprehended 1 or 2 of the 3 processes of swordsmithing. From this, Wang Chong could deduce that the black-clothed Abbasid Caliphate and Karak's Spazanu swordsmiths were still a distance away from him. At the very least, it would be impossible for them to catch up to him in the next few years. Given the level of craftsmanship, it was impossible for the other party to match up to his Wuxia steel weapon. All right, I believe you. Wei Hao admitted defeat. For some reason, even though he felt that Wang Chong's actions were wrong, Wei Hao couldn't find any words to refute the other party's confidence. Thus, he was easily convinced. But you don't have to reject the bet. A duel should be fair. Since the Karak's Spazinu merchants are rich, why are you being polite with them? Isn't it better to let them lose a few thousand gold taels? Wei Hao recalled the final matter and grumbled. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. This is called using a small trick to win a big one, throwing a brick to attract jade. Wang Chong patted Wei Hao's shoulders. He wasn't a fool, but he had a greater motive in mind. A few thousand gold taels wasn't enough to make him rich. Just Mosade's few thousand gold taels wasn't enough to make him rich. As long as he could build up the market for Wuxia steel weapons, the fortune that Wang Chong would be able to earn wouldn't be something that a sword duel gamble could match up to. I'll be leaving now. I'll leave the matters here to you. Wei Hao, remember, if such a matter happens again in the future, just deal with it according to today's situation. After which, Wang Chong beckoned to the 2 Sindhi Buddhist monks who were drinking tea outside before leaving. Wang Chong didn't want too many people to know about the swordsmithing at the Blue Bottle Pavilion. As for Mosade, this Karak's Spaz Inu sword merchant couldn't even speak the language of the Central Plains, so how could he possibly know what kind of person Wang Chong was? The moment Wang Chong left, the price on the door of the Blue Bottle Pavilion doubled, becoming 4,800 gold taels. At the same time, Mosade's Karak's Spazinu sword was also hung on the door of the Blue Bottle Pavilion. This was the first time in the past 3 days that another sword was hung on the door of the Blue Bottle Pavilion. Furthermore, from the design of the weapon, it wasn't even a sword from the Central Plains, but an authentic Karak's Spazinu sword. This novel change immediately attracted the attention of the crowd. When the contents of the sword duel gamble between Wang Chong and Mosade was exposed, the entire matter caused a commotion that even Wang Chong didn't expect. Number 1 sword in the world. The first direct confrontation between the Central Plains and Karak's Spaz Inu and Abbasid Caliphate. The first sword duel of the Tang dynasty. All kinds of news of this kind spread all over the place. There were many Karak's Spaz Inu and Abbasid Caliphate merchants in the Central Plains, but they were extremely conservative in their ways. This was the first time that a clash between Eastern and Western weapons occurred in the Tang dynasty. The entire matter immediately attracted a huge amount of attention. How can an unknown fellow represent the swords and sabers of the Tang dynasty? When the news spread to the major swordsmithing clans, the Qing clan was the first to be agitated. Even though the major swordsmithing clans were polite on the surface, they were all filled with indignation. They wanted to surpass the other swordsmithing clans and vie for the title of #1 sword in the world. Just that, no one could have expected that a nameless fellow of unknown origin would take the lead. Initially, the major swordsmithing clans had a unified stand on the matter of the Blue Bottle Pavilion, and they didn't need to bother with such an insignificant matter. But now, everything was different. Chapter 53. Pass down my orders. Bring the best saber and sword in the clan to the Blue Bottle Pavilion as well. Let everyone witness what the best saber and sword is. Upon receiving the news, Elder Qing Yuqing of the Qing clan immediately issued an order. But Elder, that's 1,200 gold taels. The threshold for this duel was extremely high. A Qing clan disciple tried to remind him, but before he could finish his words, he was interrupted. Do you think that we will lose? Qing Yuqing glared at him in displeasure. I dare not. The Qing clan disciple hurriedly lowered his head in fear. Regardless of the background of that nobody who is trying to gain the limelight, this is our chance in this wagered fight. To use 1,200 gold taels to suppress the other clans and vie for the title of the #1 sword in the world, where else can we find such an opportunity? In comparison, what is 1,200 gold taels? Qing Yuqing said. Regardless of whether it was the Qing clan, Zhang clan, Lu clan, or Huang clan, none of them dared to hold this duel. Otherwise, they would become the common enemy of the others. However, when the Blue Bottle Pavilion stepped forward, everything changed. This was a once-in-a-thousand-years opportunity. In the past, the Qing clan would inform the other clans of any news. However, this time, the Qing clan didn't tell anyone. Instead, they secretly sent a sword to the Blue Bottle Pavilion and hung it there. The same situation also happened. The Lu clan, Huang clan, and Li clan, which had several hundred years of heritage, secretly sent their swords to the Blue Bottle Pavilion. Everyone was suspicious of the other party's little tricks, but this time, no one pointed it out. Even our great Gingjin Sword Pavilion only sells a sword for 600 to 700 gold taels. What right does that lad have to sell it for 400 to 500 gold taels in the capital? Even we don't dare to do such a thing. If that lad didn't set up such a rule, we wouldn't have taken the initiative to pay him a visit. But now, you asked for it. It wasn't just the few great swordsmithing clans. In the capital, the various large sword shops and great sword workshops were filled with dissatisfaction. Wang Chang's ostentatious behavior didn't affect the major swordsmithing clans but the major swordsmithing shops and great sword workshops. Such an uninvited guest had already incurred the displeasure of the major swordsmithing clans. Go. Take out the treasure of our Gingjin Great Sword Building. Even if I can't obtain the title of #1 in the world, I'll make that guy bleed a little and teach him a lesson. In the capital, all of the great sword shops and great sword shops seemed to have come to an agreement. All of them took out their treasured swords and sabers and sent them to the Blue Bottle Pavilion. For this kind of sword and saber gamble, if one party won, it would be more than 4,000. If 10 parties won, it would be more than 40,000. This was enough for anyone or any faction to bleed. Regardless of the intentions of the crowd, with so many sabers and swords from the Central Plains participating in the duel gamble, the influence of the duel gamble grew stronger and stronger. Go! Let the Han of the Central Plains witness the prowess of our Abbasid Caliphate and Karak's Spazu. Don't look down on us just because this is the territory of the Central Plains. A large number of sword and saber merchants from the western region also joined in. The whole thing was like a rolling snowball, getting bigger and bigger and getting a little out of control. Even some swordsmithing clans, sword shops, and sword towers were attracted here. Humph! Do you really think that your swords and sabers are the #1 in the world? As the matter continued to fester, no one noticed an unprepossessing, full-bearded, brawny man standing among the crowd. Gazing at the swords and sabers on the pavilion, he sneered coldly. The Blue Bottle Pavilion wasn't some deserted alley. On the contrary, it was located in the vicinity of the Tang Dynasty's royal palace. There was a huge flow of people here, and those who came here were either wealthy merchants or martial arts experts. Such a huge matter had happened in the Blue Bottle Pavilion, and it immediately attracted the attention of many people. The full-bearded man was one of them. 10 years of forging a sword without anyone bothering about me, and I'll shock the world in a single day. After I forge that sword, I'll show you all what it means to be the number one in the world. The eyes of the full-bearded man were filled with indignation. After taking a deep glance at the swords and sabers on the pavilion, the full-bearded man retracted his gaze. Without alerting anyone, he passed through the crowd and left stealthily. After leaving the city, he walked out of the wide official road, along the undulating mountains, and through the shrubs that reached his shoulders, he finally arrived at the peak of a remote mountain. The peak of the mountain was barren, and from afar, one could smell the heavy scent of a furnace. As Xianxia walked closer, he could see broken swords strewn all over the mountain peak, scattered all over the place. At the center of these densely packed broken swords, a sword hut stood. Beside the sword hut, a huge metal furnace was still burning, and thick smoke billowed out from within. The full-bearded brawny man walked over, bent down, and used a pair of pliers to pick up a red-hot sword embryo from the metal furnace. After placing it on a metal plate, ding ding dang dang, he began striking it. This sword embryo was 4 fingers wide and 5 chi long. It was abnormally thick, and even though it wasn't completely forged, it gave off an exceptionally tough feeling. Copper, chromium. I've spent 10 years honing the secret formula, and now, I'm finally going to forge the toughest and sharpest sword in the world. This time, I'll let all the swordsmithing clans in the world see what a true swordsmithing master is. Thoughts flashed through the full-bearded brawny man's mind as he swung his hammer even faster and more ferociously. Countless sparks burst forth from his hammer. In the remote mountain, no one knew that there was an unknown swordsmithing master here. As the descendant of a hidden swordsmithing master, the full-bearded brawny man possessed the bloodline of an ancient swordsmithing tribe, the Ruren. This was the first ancient tribe in the world to forge metal weapons. Even though this tribe had long been annihilated in the annals of history, the full-bearded brawny man had successfully passed down an ancient Ruren's secret formula. The greatest wish of the full-bearded brawny man was to inherit the will of his ancestor. Not only did he want to forge the sharpest sword in the world, he also wanted to forge the toughest sword in the world. No expert would be able to break it, and he wanted to wash away the humiliation that his ancestor had once suffered. And this was his best chance. Ding ding dang dang. At the peak of the mountain, a raging gale blew and a blazing fire rose several dozen zhang into the air. The fire continued to burn from dusk till dawn, never stopping. Late in the morning, the flames at the peak of the mountain finally died down. The full-bearded brawny man held onto his newly forged broadsword and walked out of the sword hut in satisfaction, leaving the mountain. At the same time, there was an additional sword in the Blue Bottle Pavilion. The commotion caused by the sword duel gamble in the Blue Bottle Pavilion continued to grow. In just a single day, the number of swords participating in the duel gamble reached more than 20, and this was the result of a selection process. Even the high price of 1,200 gold taels wasn't able to stop them. The 4 great swordsmithing clans in the capital, the swordsmithing merchants in the western regions, the sword shops and smiths in the capital, as well as some unknown swordsmithing experts. Wei Hao was already overwhelmed with work. He had never expected that the commotion would develop to such an extent. Mosade's appearance was like a fuse that ignited the entire weapon market in the capital. A large number of swordsmithing clans, smiths, and even foreign powers joined in. The entire matter was like a broken dam, unable to be stopped. Like a rolling snowball, the attention of more and more people gradually gathered in front of the Blue Bottle Pavilion. TSK, 4,800 gold taels, to think that it would become 4,800 gold taels. Tsk. Count the number of swords on the pavilion, 20, 30. If he were to lose, he would probably lose all of his fortune and go bankrupt. Heh, even if he were to go bankrupt, he would still be wearing his pants. Haha, that fellow has kicked a metal plate. The Zhang clan, Huang clan, Lu clan, and Huang clan, which one of them isn't a top-notch swordsmithing clan in the Tang dynasty? For this lad to challenge them to a sword duel gamble, isn't he just displaying his slight skill before an expert? Hee, what do you mean by overestimating the immensity of heaven and earth? This is what it means by overestimating the immensity of heaven and earth. The capital is filled with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. How can other places compare to it? If he wants to court death, what can you do? In front of the Blue Bottle Pavilion, the crowd burst into laughter. Even though the battle for the number one sword in the world was a huge commotion, it was something that only sword merchants were concerned about. To these people, they were more concerned about something else. This storm was caused by that fellow at the Blue Bottle Pavilion. Everyone had been concerned about him all along. They weren't concerned about how formidable his swords were, but how badly that fellow would lose in the end. More than 30 top-notch swords were no joke. Just thinking about the identities of those people, they could really make one go bankrupt. Some of the more shameless ones even set up a gambling den in the vicinity of the Blue Bottle Pavilion. The matter continued to grow, and gradually, it attracted the attention of another unique group. Hee, look at the Blue Bottle Pavilion, it sure is bustling. There are so many people there. There must be at least a few thousand of them, right? The number one sword in the world, this title sure is huge. Look at those swords, they aren't bad, just that they are a little expensive. Bullshit. If there's a good sword, what does money count for? I'm just afraid that it's just an ordinary sword. That's right. How can a sword that costs 600 to 700 gold taels be considered a good sword? It's fine to sell it to ordinary people, but it's really embarrassing to sell it to us, the Imperial Army. On the golden walls of the Tang Dynasty Royal Palace, a row of Imperial Army members stood on top of the walls, gazing at the distant Blue Bottle Pavilion. Looking from the tall walls of the palace, the Blue Bottle Pavilion seemed much smaller in comparison. However, the green-colored roof and the huge crowd in the surroundings were the most eye-catching sight within a few kilometers. The Blue Bottle Pavilion was just a short distance away from the Tang Dynasty Royal Palace, and the commotion there had already attracted the attention of the Imperial Army. Life within the palace was extremely dull. Thus, when the duel gamble involving the swords of the Central Plains and the Western regions was announced, it immediately attracted the attention of the Imperial Army. Who is that? It seems to be Li Jun too. Just as they were chatting merrily, someone suddenly spoke. Everyone followed the gaze of that colleague and saw a few familiar figures walking toward the Blue Bottle Pavilion. Shoo! It's Lord Zhao. Shut up, don't speak anymore. The expressions of the Imperial Army changed slightly, and none of them spoke a word. The distance of several hundred zhang was covered in an instant, and before the eyes of the Imperial Army members, the three figures walked into the Blue Bottle Pavilion. We're from the Imperial Army. The three of them took out their identity tokens and revealed their identities. What? Wei Hao was busy tidying up the information of the guests who were participating in the duel gamble. Upon hearing those words, his eyes widened and he abruptly stood up. His entire being calmed down. Without waiting for the trio to continue speaking, Wei Hao sucked in a deep breath and stared at the trio seriously. He waved his hand, walked around the table, and hastily strode forward. The three Imperial guards were baffled by his actions. Chapter 54. Wang Chong, the Imperial Army that you spoke of is really here. This was the first thing that Wei Hao said as he rushed into the Wang family residence. Back then, when he was selling his sword, Wang Chong had mentioned to him that if the Imperial Army were to buy his sword, he should remind him. He didn't expect that the Imperial Army would really come. At the top floor of the Blue Bottle Pavilion, Wang Chong saw the Imperial Army that Wei Hao spoke of. Ever since he was born, this was the first time that Wang Chong had seen the Imperial Army. The Imperial Army guarded the capital and protected the emperor. They were the royalty of the world, and they were born with the imprint of the royal family. Most people rarely came into contact with them. This was also the first time that Wang Chong had come into contact with the imperial army of the royal family. This was also the reason why Wei Hao was so surprised. What a strong scent of authority. It's no wonder that many scions in the capital don't dare to offend the imperial army. Wang Chong said to himself as he looked at these people. As they guarded the emperor and the royal family, they came into contact with many officials in the royal palace. Thus, the imperial army carried a strong scent of authority on them. Compared to ordinary soldiers, it was like comparing an official to a servant. Even without a token, it was easy to differentiate them. These people were like tigers and tigers, but they were also taciturn. Before them, it was easy for ordinary people to feel fearful, restrained, and uncomfortable. In terms of disposition, it was indeed impossible for an ordinary person to stand against them. The emperor's guards are indeed formidable, as expected of the strongest and most elite army in the world. Wang Chong complimented them. Wang Chong had seen the imperial army in his previous life. Compared to his previous life, the imperial army still retained the image of a mighty and valiant army in Wang Chong's mind. The imperial army was fond of martial arts. Thus, their prestige far exceeded that of ordinary people. However, a few years later, with the decline of the Tang dynasty and the emphasis on culture and the suppression of martial power, a large number of noblemen and playboys were squeezed into the imperial army and occupied high positions, while those with talent were pushed out of the imperial army. As a result, the imperial army, which was the most valiant in his previous life, became a weak army. When they were needed to protect the capital and the world, the imperial army collapsed on the battlefield with thousands of casualties, which became the heaviest shame of the Tang dynasty and the pain in the hearts of Wang Chong and everyone in the world at that time. Such a tragedy once is enough. No matter what, I will not allow such a thing to happen in the imperial army again. Wang Chong felt a lump in his throat. When the tragedy happened in his previous life, he was in the capital and saw with his own eyes the corpses of the imperial army piled up on top of each other, piling up in all the alleys from outside the city to the palace, forming a magnificent sight. Blood flowed like a river in the alleyway, giving Wang Chong a shock he had never felt before, as well as sorrow. It was at that time that Wang Chong lost his family for the first time, his aunt and uncle. Taking in a deep breath, Wang Chong quickly calmed himself down. Regardless of how the imperial army was in his memory, that was something that happened in his previous life. In this life, the fate of the Wang clan had been changed by him. What happened in his previous life might not necessarily happen in this one. Wang Chong calmed himself down and slowly swept his gaze across the three of them. When his gaze fell on the man who had a lightning-shaped scar on his glabella, his heart suddenly jolted. It's him! Wang Chong suddenly recognized the person. Zhao Fengchen. Wang Chong didn't expect the person to be him, one of the three legendary experts of the imperial army. In his previous life, he was once the marshal of the imperial army. His most distinctive trait was the lightning-shaped scar on his glabella. In his previous life, everyone said that Zhao Fengchen carried two sabers with him, one by his waist and the other by his glabella. It was through this that Wang Chong recognized him. Compared to the Zhao Fengchen in Wang Chong's memory, the Zhao Fengchen before him was clearly much younger. There was an air of inexperience about him, and he was far from the valiant aura he exuded in his previous life. But even so, this Zhao Fengchen had already displayed many outstanding traits. Of the three, his aura and might were clearly a notch higher. If he didn't remember wrongly, this Zhao Fengchen was probably a marshal of the imperial army, a top-notch figure in the imperial army. In the future, his achievements would be even greater. His future was truly bright. The position of the supreme commander of the imperial army was still waiting for him. To think that it would be him. Wang Chong's heart pounded furiously. This wasn't the reason why he remembered him. To Wang Chong, he had another more illustrious identity, the most famous Wuxia steel weapon collector in the Central Plains. In his previous life, all of the legends regarding the Wuxia steel were related to him. Zhao Fengchen was a typical martial arts fanatic. He was extremely interested in top-notch weapons, especially Wuxia steel weapons. Of the most expensive Wuxia steel weapons in his previous life, nearly a third of them came from his hands. Zhao Fengchen's interest in the toughness, sharpness, and unique patterns of Wuxia steel had reached a level of fanaticism. In his previous life, when the reputation of Wuxia steel weapons rose to fame in the Central Plains, Zhao Fengchen was the one who started it. Furthermore, the incomparably sharp Wuxia steel weapons, coupled with his outstanding cultivation, created the legend of him being the strongest in the imperial army. It's really like fishing and catching a big whale. The 108,000 pores on Wang Chong's body opened up, and he suddenly felt incomparably comfortable. This was fate. Initially, Wang Chong's intention of selling the Wuxia steel weapons was just to lure a few wealthy imperial army members. To think that he would end up with the prehistoric shark, Zhao Fengchen. Zhao Fengchen's love for the Wuxia steel was publicly acknowledged to be ingrained into his bones. If the Wuxia steel was a kind of poison, then Zhao Fengchen would definitely be deeply poisoned, and there was no cure for it. The sudden appearance of such a famous figure in Wang Chong's plans gave Wang Chong a huge confidence boost. "You're the owner of that sword?" Zhao Fengchen asked. This youngster gave him a weird feeling. If others knew that he was an imperial army member, they would be fearful of him. However, this youngster stared at him in a daze, seemingly thinking of something. "I am." Coming back to his senses, Wang Chong faintly smiled, his expression unrestrained. Zhao Fengchen didn't reveal his name to Wei Hao. Clearly, he didn't want others to know of his identity. Since Wang Chong knew of his identity, he wouldn't let him off so easily. "I wish to buy the sword hanging on your door. May I know if you can remove the black cloth for me to take a look? If I'm satisfied, I'm willing to pay a price that will satisfy you. Even higher than your current offer." Zhao Fengchen went straight to the point and stated his purpose for coming here. His actions were exceptionally straightforward. "How much can you offer?" Wang Chong didn't back down. "No less than 8,000 gold taels." Zhao Fengchen made a gesture that blinded Wei Hao. My goodness, what kind of person is this? The offer on the door was only 4,800 gold taels, and this fellow actually offered 8,000. Are all the imperial army members in the royal palace that wealthy? Wei Hao's lower jaw nearly fell to the ground. My monthly expenses are only 10 gold taels. Based on his spending rate, he probably won't be able to finish spending it his entire life. What is extravagant? This is extravagant. How extravagant? Hurry up and agree to it. Wei Hao couldn't help but urge. Only a fool would reject 8,000 gold taels. If a weapon could be sold for 8,000 gold taels, then the 90,000 gold taels that Wang Chong owed the two Buddhist monks wouldn't be a problem at all. This time, he was rich. "No." Wang Chong stared at Zhao Fengchen calmly. The two words that he spat out shattered Wei Hao's dream. "Why?" Wei Hao and Zhao Fengchen blurted out at the same time. "Wang Chong, you're insane. Why would you reject such a good offer?" Wei Hao was on the verge of going insane from anxiety. That was 8,000 gold taels. If he were to sell it, after paying off the debt of 1,700 gold taels to Su Bai and the others, as well as the possible penalty for the contract with the Hyderabad or Wang Chong would still have quite a bit of money left. Given their expenditure, it was sufficient for them to lead a befuddled life for several decades. That was more than 1,000 gold taels. To think that Wang Chong would reject such an offer. Wei Hao felt that he couldn't keep up with his train of thought. "This Gongzi, my offer shouldn't be low, right?" Zhao Fengchen felt differently from Wei Hao. He had to admit that this youngster had left him shocked. 8,000 gold taels. Most people wouldn't be able to resist the temptation. Yet, this youngster before him rejected it without even thinking about it. This left Zhao Fengchen astonished, and at the same time, he couldn't understand the reason behind it. "General has just arrived here, so you might not know the rules of my sword sale. You are not allowed to look, touch, and of course, you are not allowed to remove the black cloth covering the sword. Do you understand my words?" Wang Chong said calmly. Wang Chong wasn't surprised by Zhao Fengchen's wealth at all. Possessing the memories of his previous life, Wang Chong couldn't be clearer about Zhao Fengchen's background. The person before him had an illustrious background, the wealthiest man in the capital, as well as the young master of the prestigious Zhao clan. Zhao Fengchen had a secret that few knew of. Zhao Fengchen had a sliver of the royal bloodline. In his great-grandfather's generation, there was once a princess of the royal family who descended into the Zhao clan, and she was Zhao Fengchen's great-grandmother. It was this sliver of royal bloodline that created Zhao Fengchen's unique standing, causing him to be highly regarded in the clan. The Zhao clan supported him relentlessly. No matter what Zhao Fengchen needed, they would grant it to him. The reason why Zhao Fengchen was able to achieve so much in his later life, becoming the Grand Marshal of the Imperial Army at such a young age, was closely related to the support of the clan. The Zhao clan had always hidden this secret, and it was only many years later that it was revealed. The Zhao clan was said to be the wealthiest clan in the capital, and they were said to be the wealthiest clan in the capital. Regardless of whether it was to Zhao Fengchen or the Zhao clan, 8,000 gold taels meant nothing. Now was indeed the best time to do so. However, this wasn't what Wang Chong wanted. No one knew better than Wang Chong how popular the Wuxia steel weapons would become in the future. 8,000 gold taels might be a huge sum to an ordinary person, but to the true value of the Wuxia steel weapons in the future, it was equivalent to making a losing deal. How could Wang Chong possibly be tempted by it? Rules can be changed. 8,000 gold taels should be enough to compensate Gongzi's loss, right? It's just a glance, Gongzi doesn't mind. Zhao Fengchen persuaded in an attempt to change Wang Chong's mind. Hee, I just want to ask a question. If you aren't satisfied after taking a look, will you pay 8,000 gold taels as well? Surprised, Wang Chong pointed out the crux of the matter. Zhao Fengchen was stumped for words. The reason why he offered 8,000 gold taels was to buy a good sword. If he were to pay such a price for a piece of scrap metal, he would be a fool. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation, audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.